Thank you. Sorry, a bit late. It was traffic in Monkey Forest, so I thought it would be fast, but I'm so sorry. Let me begin by giving you a warm welcome. I hope you enjoy your time here in Bali, this beautiful island, exotic, and the only place in Indonesia where the mixture of Hinduism and local culture produces the artistry of life unsurpassed by any other regions in our country or perhaps in the world. Let me also say this: it is always nice to be in Bali, particularly during the fasting month of Ramadan. For the liberal Muslims, being in this tropical paradise gives no complication whatsoever between our philosophy of liberty and our need to enjoy the Balinese cuisine whenever we feel like it, unrestrained by the movement of the sun in the sky. Now let me give you a brief assessment of Indonesia, a simple progress report, as a starting point to discuss how best to help the country to become stronger, growing more mature in the direction of free and prosperous society. Indonesia has been a democracy for more than a decade, the third biggest in the world. Democratic transitions are always difficult, even under the best of circumstances, especially for a large and plural society like Indonesia. But I think we have passed the most difficult test when the country was on the verge of breaking apart in the early years of the transition, or when the most dire effects of the 1998 financial crisis brought the country's economy almost to its knees. That was a period of growing pains, of maturing as a nation when the challenges were at their greatest. Fortunately, perhaps because of our foundation as a nation was deep and strong, Indonesia held on and survived. The trials of that period made us stronger. Among the biggest gains we have made so far is the growing consensus that we are not turning back. Freedom, democracy, open society, protection of basic rights. These are now part of Indonesia's grand narrative, which we are going to protect and transfer to the next generation and beyond. In retrospect, it was some kind of miracle. Freed from authoritarian rule in 1998, more than 100 million individual voters exercised the right of free choice peacefully in about 500,000 voting stations around the country, electing their leaders in 3 levels of government. It was moving, it was beautiful, and we have done it in 3 cycles of election to date. Besides that, we have also managed to maintain our moderation and our religious tolerance while expanding the sphere of free discussion. We know this has not been easy. From time to time, setbacks and terrible things have occurred, like the bombing in Bali and the bloody ethno-religious conflicts in Ambon and Poso, which tested our commitments and our political will to ensure social and religious harmony. But overall, given the complexity of our society, with hundreds of ethnic groups scattered along 5,000 kilometers from east to west, or twice the distance between London and Athens, we have dealt with the problems quite well while learning to exercise power in proportion to our need. True, there have been some issues here that need to be dealt with carefully, especially those which are related to the existence of small minorities within the Big Ten of Islam, but it will not be totally off the mark to say that Indonesia so far has demonstrated quite convincingly that Islam is compatible with democracy and modernization. We have proven here that Islamic parties, from whatever persuasions, the spectrum of belief in Islam is quite plural, are capable of being transformed into democratic participants in our free elections. As members of our parliament, their politicians, Islamic politicians, have behaved like other normal political players, being involved in the trade-off of power and interest, which is what democracy is all about. The fundamental issues between the state and Islam, which was before very divisive, is now losing its attraction, being absorbed in the daily and the dynamics of our plural society. Another area which Indonesia has also exceeded expectations has been the empowerment of the region, particularly in Sumatra, Kalimantan, and the island on the eastern side of Indonesia. Decentralization of power has resulted in what we call silent revolution. Directly elected governors, mayors, and local representatives are now playing a more important role in shaping policies and delivering basic services to the people around the country. What we did in this regard was perhaps the world's biggest experiment in power devolution. The world's biggest experiment in power devolution, when the authority of the central government was simultaneously transferred to hundreds of provinces, counties, and local parliaments. Successful leadership in the regions is one of the key factors that explain why the rates of economic growth in the regions outside Java, Java is the main island where 60% of the people live, have been consistently higher than those of the major areas in Java. In the coming years, this will result in a big transformation in which the country's engine of growth will no longer be only in Jakarta, Surabaya, and Bandung, those big cities in Java, but also in Balikpapan, in Kalimantan, in Medan, in Sumatra, and in Makassar, Sulawesi. The future of Indonesia lies in our thriving regions, and Indonesia will become a stronger country because of it. Now, this progressive trend in the regions is also the reason why, while we were transforming our politics into becoming a more democratic country, our national economy grew surprisingly well. So we tackled these two big issues, political transformation and economic transformation, joining the ranks of other high achievers in the developing world like China, India, Chile, and Brazil. In the depth of the 1998 financial crisis, and again in the 2008 mini crisis when Lehman Brothers collapsed and rippled effect into our shores, it was in fact our regional economies that saved us, growing sometimes by more than 10% a year. In about a decade or so, if this trend continues, Indonesia will join the rank of the so-called upper middle income countries, democracy, growth, which means that our middle class will become significantly greater in number and more dispersed in geographic location, which of course in turn should help strengthen the foundation of our democracy. In 2045, the country was proclaimed its independence in 1945. Indonesia will become a century old. Our hope is that by that time, or in one more generation, in the generation of my sons, Indonesia will become a more mature democracy with a stronger and more open economy. Now, by painting this rosy scenario, I'm not saying that our journey will be easy. With all its progress, the Indonesian economy has not realized its full potential due to a range of structural problems, many of which are related to our infrastructure. The Maki forest was quite small and jammed. I mean, we were there for half an hour just stuck in the middle. I mean, but if you go to Jakarta, okay, I know you came to Bali through Jakarta or Denpasar to Ubud. If you go to Jakarta, after you have arrived at Soekarno-Hatta Airport in Cengkareng, and you are in a car heading to your hotel, it is easy to understand the problem. The airport is aging with a rapidly increasing number of flights, even more rapid than Changi Airport in Singapore. Changi is the busiest airport in Asia, but the rate of increase of flight in Cengkareng is more than it is in Changi. The traffic jam is just terrible as you make your way along the only toll road, which was built more than 30 years ago. Last month I was in Chicago. My son was in the Kellogg School of Business, and from the airport back and forth, I thought it was worse, but Jakarta was twice as bad. This toll road is the only freeway passing through the heart of Jakarta, the only tollway passing the port. Jakarta has 12 million people in the daytime, and there is only one freeway passing the heart of Jakarta. There have been many plans to improve Jakarta's traffic and build new freeways, but so far we have not been very successful in catching up with the city's rapid growth. This problem happens not only in Jakarta, but in fact in many our major cities. And I am not talking about roads and freeway, but also, sadly, about many other public facilities like power plants, port and airports, public hospitals, and the like. It has created bottlenecks in many areas which are slowing us down. The irony is that such bottlenecks have occurred not because we could not afford to pay for better infrastructure. Last year alone, we spent more than 25 billion US dollar for fuel and other misdirected subsidies. The biggest expenditure of the government, even more than our expenditure for education. This is a terrible waste of limited resources, and yet we do it every year and there seems to be no alternative in sight. This, I think, is among the greatest public policy problems that we will have to deal with in the coming years. It is good news that our current government, led by President Joko Widodo, I'm sure all of you know about him now, has started to cope with this problem directly, cutting the subsidy and partially adjusted the oil prices in the market. We have to see how far this positive trend is to continue when the international prices of oil started to move up again. It's easy to cut subsidies now while the oil price is down, but when it goes up again, then you are faced with real problem. Apart from all the normal reform of policies that we do have in many sectors, there is this major basic question about the boundary between the state and the market and the degree to which we have to embrace globalization. This is a fundamental question whose answer is related to Indonesia's intellectual tradition from its conception as a nation. Practically, all of our founding fathers were under the sway of Marxism and socialism, something not unique in Indonesia in 1940s and 1950s. They were urbane, they were humane, they had open-heart nationalism, but they never understood that market and capitalism were not the offsprings of colonialism. For them, these were all the same. The influence of anti-market ideas were deep and long. When we deregulated the economy in mid-1980s, the pro-market economists in the government hid behind the iron hands of Suharto. If it were to be open for debate, the pro-market policies, which lifted millions of people out of poverty in the 1980s and early 1990s, the pro-market policies, if it were open to be debated in public, would perhaps be dead before long. Now, we have to learn the lesson from the past. There are a lot of things to do. Since we are now democratic, economic liberalism needs to be framed as persuasive arguments, something that people can easily understand, supported by facts and solid data. Perhaps we need to encourage the role of the second-hand dealers of ideas, a term coined by Friedrich Hayek in early 1970s, to fight the intellectual battle in popular newspapers, talk shows, seminars, or many other intellectual activities that are now open. I know it is a tall order, and with the shifting and uncertain intellectual winds in the US and Europe regarding the role of the state in the economy, with divisive issues such as austerity, the perceived rising of inequality. Look at how popular Piketty's book last year, regulations of the financial market, and so on. Our task here is not made easier. So we need to work harder and seize every opportunity to do the good work. Let me say one more thing, especially about the politics of democracy in Indonesia and its relation to the policymaking. In the US, with only two parties in Congress, a good and consistent public policy is harder to sustain because the ground of consensus is now narrowing. The gulf between the Democrats and the Republicans is widening, and hence, as they say in Washington, D.C., politicians on both sides are now becoming more ideological. Now, in Indonesia, what happens lately is completely the reverse. When 10 parties now in our we have 10 parties now in our parliament, 9 before the last election. Politics and power play are becoming more fluid and pragmatic. There is less and less parties' attachment to specific policy. It is all depending on the issues, not ideology. For the untrained eyes, Indonesian politics is now becoming more elusive or quite confusing. Now, this might be good, this might be bad, but it also provides wide opportunity for us to influence the politicians with pro-market ideas, both in the parliament or in the executive government. Or should I say, we can also become politicians by joining the big parties and do the job from within the house of power. From my personal experience, I'm no politician of Golkar, I can tell you that it is not going to be easy, but it is worth the effort. Power is dangerous. Power is like opium. But if we are good enough, we can use it to help millions of people to hope for a better future. Thank you. You have Q&A session or that? Yeah, okay.
So we have some time for some questions. Do we have any questions? Yes. Why don't you, I'll bring the microphone to you.
I know it's fasting month, but do you have a water?
Yeah, we have water.
Thank you. Yes. Should I turn it off?
No,
Yes.
that's their mic.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
My name is Winston Ling from Brazil. I have a question. This decentralization of
Power.
to the regions, it was accompanied with decentralization of government revenue or taxation.
Yes. We devised a new budget where the proportion of the regions were increasing, also balanced between, because there were some rich regions, some poor regions. So we've got to put a cap on something like, you know, we divided according to the number of population, the direct transfer from the central government. But the region, of course, the rich region produce oil, large tract of land for modern kelapa sawit, palm oil. So those are the rich regions. The poor regions like NTT, who doesn't have much to produce, they are receiving subsidies from the center.
Okay, so the taxation is still
Oh,
centralized
yes.
and being distributed.
Yes. That's the beauty of Indonesia compared to India, right? Because basically, although we decentralize economy, we have national economy. The decentralization of politics doesn't really, the economy is still national. Now in India it's different. That's why Narendra Modi now is very difficult, because they need to nationalize tax base, right? So that's a very good question, and that's the lucky, well, I don't know if it's lucky or not, but that's the fact that we have still national economy despite all this political decentralization. That it's answered so tax is divided nationally. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Andrew, can you come forward so you're not sure what you said right here, so people can see your beautiful face? Thank you.
I just want to ask a question. So interesting about this evolution in Indonesia experience. And you mentioned its tax is still centralized,
Yes.
but distributed
Right.
all over.
Yes.
Question in developing countries is this: democracy are often in form only, not in essence, because there's a lot of corrupt politicians who rig the election results to buy votes from the poor villagers and so on. So if you decentralize your revenue generation to the local area, the mafia, the little godfathers in every little region are strengthened initially, and they become very powerful, even more powerful than before, and they can control their region strongly. How do you solve this problem in developing countries? I suspect Indonesia, reading your political history, those mafia are still very powerful. How do you solve the strengthening of them and making sure that it's moving towards the right direction in real essence of democracy as well?
It's a good question, Andrew. It's a work in progress. But it's true that there was this corruption before. So the corruption was centralized. I mean, well, let's give it a bad example. If you are foreign company, big foreign company, you want to open a large tract of palm oil in Sumatra, you just go to the ministry in Jakarta and do some normal business practice a la Jakarta, and then your project in Sumatra will get done. Right? So the corruption occurred in Jakarta. Now corruption, we are fighting corruption, and it is, I don't know, well, we'll see. But when you decentralize the politics, then of course you also decentralize corruption, right? Now if you want to open up palm oil plantation, you still have to go to Jakarta, but you have to go to the governor in Sumatra, let's say North Sumatra. You have to go to the mayors of a small region in Sumatra where your plantation is located. So you have 3 layers of government now whose authority you need in order to launch your project. Okay? So if you see it pragmatically, okay, it's good to erase corruption. It's good to clean up the government. But sometimes in life, you just have to have a choice here. While you are still having corruption, is it better to corrupt centrally in Jakarta, or you divide the money in 3 levels? As long as they spend the money in Medan or in Pekanbaru, not only in Jakarta, the local economy will recruit. This is pragmatic view. Of course, we are setting, that's why we have democracy. Now, I agree with you that democracy evolved over time, sir. Andrew, I've been trying.
Not Andrew.
Oh, sorry. So, it takes time to build democracy. It takes time to clean up the government. What we have been successful so far is setting up procedures. Okay, we have free and fair election. We have open competition. Okay, we try to open up the economy more and more. Okay, hence we narrow the base of corruption. With hope, I believe. I mean, if you read all these giants in liberal thinking, we believe competition will create something that we have to play. Of course, that's why the role of the state is important. As long as you create regulations that are supportive of competition, not vice versa. Once you create all of these regulations that disregard the logic of competition and the necessity of modern business practices, then you have corruption. So what we do is to create a system. Democracy is now establishing good procedures for competition, free and fair election with open review and open exchange of idea, and people choose without force by anybody. Hopefully in 2, 3, 4 decades ahead. I know it's long time ahead, but hey, in 40 years, 30 years, we are going to be 100 years old. And if it is 2045, Indonesia, GDP, let's say, 2 or twice the rate that we have now. That means we are like going to be South Korea in economic terms. But our democracy is going to be more mature. Our economy is going to be more open. I think I will be very proud if my son later on can say, Daddy, Indonesia now is in the league of the 10 most prosperous country with strong democracy. Now Indonesia is a member of G20, right? We are the 3rd biggest democracy, 4th largest in the world. Okay, it takes time to move this big train, very pluralism. Here in Bali, this is the center of Hinduism. This is beautiful. Around the country, let me also inform you, just for the sake of discussion, maybe you don't know. If you read The Economist, right? Open the website. February edition 2012, they were having this international survey with the question not of economics, but of psychology. The question was, where is the people? What country is it that can be called the happiest country in the world? With all this South Korea, United States, Japan, with all these industries, a very simple, humane question. Who is the happiest people on earth? And who is the most miserable people on earth? Not in terms of their income, but in terms of their subjective understanding of their life satisfaction. All right, then I know elusive question, speculative, but guess what is the top countries in terms of happiness according to how they perceive their life? I'll give you. Sorry? Okay, what else? Iceland, what else? And what is, okay, Iceland, what is the worst? Okay, is anybody here from South Korea? Is anybody here from South Korea? South Korea is the lowest bottom of the index. Only 10% of the population feel they are very happy. Right? The question is, the standard questionnaire, do you think, what is the category that you think your life is in now? Very happy, happy, quite happy, not very happy. Okay? South Korea only 10% say very happy. What is the middle rank of countries that are moderately happy? Australia and United States. Now, what is the happiest country on earth?
India.
Indonesia. See, poverty level is high, corruption, everything, but every day we manage to laugh. We take life lightly. See, in Bali, fasting month, but I have, my glass of water. I'm a Muslim, by the way. Thank you. Do you have one question?
5 more minutes.
All right. Don't ask me about happiness, okay? I don't know how to define it. You must be Indonesian?
Yes.
She's smiling all the time. Indonesian. Very good.
In English or Indonesian? In English. Okay. What do you think how to local communities and the local production to survive in the middle of stronger important after the government of Indonesian sides the AFTA and CHAFTA? In terms of economic and political democracy of the country.
That's good. Very good. Now we are going to have.
Summarize the question again, just very briefly.
Okay,
Summarize
so
it.
we have this big international AFTA is ASEAN Free Trade. Before we had APEC, and now we have TPP. Indonesia is not included, but the world is becoming more globalized with structure of free trade agreement. Sometimes bilateral, sometimes multilateral. Now, how are we going to do the small-scale business in Bali or everywhere? I don't think free trade and free competition kills the small or the medium-sized business. Look around Monkey Forest. Yeah? It's not a huge company. I know there is a Starbucks in Monkey Forest. I was surprised. Monkey Forest, Starbucks. But I think all or most of these cafe, restaurants, hotel, they are not 4-star hotel, they are not 5-star hotel, they are not, Starbucks all the time, they are not big chain of restaurant. See, I mean, soon it's good in Bali, and many of the owners are foreigners, or they rent the cafe, and I think most of them are in the partnership with the local small-scale businessmen. Is that correct? If I'm wrong, they are not partnered with Bill Gates, right? They are not partnering with Amazon or something. They partner with small scale and medium scale. So I think if we have creativity, if we have determination, the world is very rich. Indonesia is very big. No company will be able to monopolize or to control the whole range of things. Yeah, is that? So, see the beauty of Indonesia. Difficult problem, not difficult, we laugh and smile. Thank you. Thank you so much.